Welcome to part 5. Still breathing. He looked around the table. This meeting is adjourned. As Edward left the boardroom, he caught sight of Claire slumped in a chair, trembling, mascara streaking. And Alexander pacing furiously, dialing lawyers no lawyer would now dare answer. Their takedown was not loud. Not violent. Not cinematic. Just final. The shift had begun. And the whole city would soon know who destroyed the Hale legacy. And who saved it. The storm outside the Hale estate broke just after sunset, rain hammering the windows, wind whipping through the garden like something determined to cleanse the place. Inside, the house felt quieter than it had in weeks. Alexander and Claire were still here, but stripped of authority, stripped of staff deference, stripped of every illusion they'd stood on. They moved like ghosts, shaken, humiliated, unsure of what the world looked like now that the ground beneath them had collapsed. Edward stood in the doorway of the library, watching his son pace by the cold fireplace. Alexander's suit jacket was off, sleeves rolled, hair messy. For once, he looked less like a polished heir and more like a frightened man. "You ruined us," Alexander muttered. "No," Edward replied. "You did that yourselves." Alexander spun. "You set us up. You manipulated the situation, you." "I revealed the truth," Edward cut in, voice steady. "I didn't put those words in your mouth, Alexander. I didn't tell you to sell my home while I was still living in it. I didn't tell you to lie to the board. I didn't tell you to celebrate my death before it happened." His son's mouth trembled. "We were scared." "Of what?" Alexander's eyes filled. "Of you dying and leaving us with nothing solid. Of being out there alone with everyone expecting us to be as successful as you." Edward's expression softened, briefly. "Success isn't inherited. You earn it. But greed? That you demonstrated effortlessly." Alexander flinched. "And Claire?" Edward asked quietly. What was her fear? That I'd love someone more than her. He let the words simmer in the air. "Go pack your things," Edward finished. "You're leaving tonight. I'll arrange temporary housing, but nothing more." Alexander swallowed hard. "Where's the trust? The allowance? You're really cutting us off." "Yes," Edward said. "Because you've proven you can't handle privilege. Maybe you'll learn to handle life." Those were the last words he spoke to his son before turning away. He found Claire in the upstairs hall, sitting on the floor with her knees drawn to her chest, mascara smeared down her cheeks. She didn't look up when he approached. "Claire," he said softly. She wiped her eyes. "Don't. I know what you're going to say." "Do you?" She laughed weakly, bitterly. "That I'm horrible. That I deserve this. That I'm ungrateful." Edward crouched beside her with a slow, careful breath. "You're not horrible," he murmured. "But you are lost." Her chin trembled. "You've lived in privilege so long," he continued, "you forgot that love is not automatic. That respect isn't guaranteed. That being my daughter doesn't exempt you from consequences." Tears spilled. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." "I know," he said gently. "But you meant enough of it." Claire pulled her sleeves over her hands. Are you going to replace us? With her?" "Lily?" he asked. "No. She's not replacing anyone. She's reminding me of who I used to be." Claire looked away. "We thought you didn't need us." Edward exhaled. "I needed you to be good people. That's all." A shudder ran through her. "Pack your things," he said softly. "You'll leave tonight with your brother. The world isn't gentle, Claire. But maybe facing it will teach you compassion." She looked up at him for the first time, not as an entitled daughter, but as someone realizing she'd broken something she couldn't unbreak. "Dad. I'm sorry." Edward nodded once. "Then start living like it." Downstairs, in James Lawson's modest office next to the study, Lily sat across from him with her hands folded in her lap. She had come because Edward asked her to, but she didn't know why. James handed her a document folder. "Lily, Mr. Hale has set up something for you." She blinked. "For me?" "Yes. Independent of his family. Independent of the company. Something that cannot be taken from you." She hesitated before opening the folder, heart pounding. Inside were legal documents, simple, elegant, unmistakably life-changing. A fully furnished apartment in her name. A monthly stipend for caregiving. A medical care fund for her mother. Tuition vouchers if she ever wished to study. A discretionary emergency account. Lily froze. "I can't accept this," she whispered. James smiled gently. "You already did. The day you walked into that house and treated him like a human being." Tears welled in her eyes. "But I didn't do anything special." "That," James said, "is exactly what makes you deserving." Her chest tightened. "What about his children? Won't this hurt them?" He shook his head. "Lily, they hurt themselves. This is about restoring balance, not taking sides." She pressed a hand to her mouth, trying to breathe. "He shouldn't have done all this." "He didn't do it out of pity," James said softly. "He did it out of clarity. You reminded him that goodness still exists." Her tears fell freely now. And James added, "This isn't charity. This is compensation. For the fear, the humiliation, the sacrifices, silent ones, you endured while everyone else was tearing him apart." Lily closed the folder slowly, hands trembling. She had come into the Hale house to earn a little more money. She had not expected to walk out with her life rewritten. Later that night, Edward stood in the foyer, watching Alexander and Claire roll their suitcases toward the door. Neither looked back. He didn't call after them. He didn't soften. Justice had finally taken its shape. As the door shut, the rain softened into a whisper. Edward leaned on the banister, breath steady for the first time in weeks. His revenge was closing. His rescue was beginning. And for the first time in his life, he felt lighter. Because tomorrow, finally, the truth would come out. Not just for his children, but for Lily, too. The next morning arrived quietly, as if the sky itself were cautious not to disturb the fragile stillness inside the Hale estate. The storm had passed, leaving a glossy sheen on the garden stones. Sunlight slipped through breaks in the clouds, casting long gold stripes across the foyer floor. The house, once bustling with decorators, estate agents, and entitled footsteps, felt strangely emptied, almost peaceful. For the first time in months, Edward breathed without a weight on his chest. He waited in the sitting room, the soft tick of the mantel clock marking time as he rehearsed the words he'd meant to say weeks ago. Words he should have said earlier. Words he no longer feared saying. A gentle knock sounded at the doorframe. Lily stood there, hair brushed back, eyes soft but cautious. She held the folder containing the documents James had given her. She looked like someone trying not to disturb reality, in case it wasn't real. "You wanted to see me?" she asked quietly. Edward gestured to the chair beside him. "Come in, Lily. Please." She moved slowly, sitting with her hands folded in her lap like she did on the first day she'd walked into his life. He studied her face, still tired, still carrying the quiet sadness of someone used to struggle, but now edged with something new. "Hope." "Lily," he began, "there's something I owe you. Something more important than any trust or apartment." She blinked. "Sir, you've already done too much." "No," he interrupted, voice firm but gentle. "I haven't said the truth." Her brows furrowed faintly. "The truth?" Edward inhaled deeply. "I'm not dying." Lily's breath stopped. "I fabricated the diagnosis. Not out of malice, but to run a test. A foolish, desperate test to see my children's true hearts." Silence settled between them, fragile and heavy. "I never meant for you to be caught in the crossfire," he added. "You were never part of the plan. But your kindness, your loyalty, your humanity, revealed more truth than any test ever could." Her eyes filled, but not with anger, something closer to heartbreak. "You pretended to be dying?" "Yes." He lowered his gaze. "And I'm deeply ashamed of how far it went." Lily sat back, processing everything. The doctor visits. The medication schedules. The hushed tones. The slow movements. The eyes of pity she thought she'd been comforting. "All that time," she whispered, "you weren't sick." "No," he said softly. "But I was broken. My children shattered something inside me long before this test began." She closed her eyes, a few tears sliding down her cheeks. He waited, letting her breathe through it, letting her hurt, letting her find her footing. After a long moment, she opened her eyes again. "I don't forgive the lie," she said quietly. "But I understand the pain behind it." Edward nodded solemnly. "Thank you. And," she continued, wiping her cheeks, "you were right to expose them. They needed consequences." He exhaled slowly, relief, gratitude, regret tangled together. "But next time," she added gently, "don't set yourself on fire to see other people's shadows." Edward absorbed the truth of her words without defense. She didn't speak like a subordinate. She spoke like someone who had earned the right to reveal a truth he'd never been brave enough to face. He leaned forward. "There's more you should know." She tensed, bracing. "The envelope you never saw, it contained the beginnings of what James gave you last night. I meant to give it to you long before any of this fell apart. You didn't lose it. I did." Her shoulders sagged. "All this time. I thought I'd failed you." He shook his head. "You were the only person in this house who didn't fail me." At that, Lily's resolve wavered, and she covered her face briefly, letting herself weep, not from weakness, but from release. He gave her time, said nothing, allowed her to feel the enormity of what she had carried silently, all while holding the world together for her mother. When she finally looked up, Edward took her hand gently. "Lily Carter," he said softly, "I don't want you to stay here because you feel indebted or obligated. I want you to stay because you are valued. Because your presence has made me better. Not as a patient. As a man." More tears fell, but this time, she smiled through them. "I'll stay," she whispered. "Not for the apartment. Not for the stipend. But because you need someone who still believes in you." He nodded. "And I do." Later that afternoon, Edward watched from the upstairs window as Alexander and Claire climbed into a waiting taxi. No driver. No entourage. No fanfare. Just two people facing the consequences of their own choices. Claire glanced back once, eyes swollen, mascara faint on her cheeks. Alexander didn't look back at all. They weren't villains now. Just lost souls with a long road ahead. "Do you think they'll be okay?" Lily's voice floated up softly from beside him. "One day," Edward said. "But not because of money. Because they'll have to learn what love truly looks like, and what it doesn't." Lily nodded softly. "Pain can be a teacher." He smiled faintly. "You're wiser than your years." She shrugged. "Life taught me early." They stood together in quiet understanding. That evening, Edward and Lily sat in the conservatory as twilight painted the sky in soft lavender. She poured tea. He breathed easier. Everything felt strangely new, as though the house itself was exhaling after months of being strangled by greed. Edward turned to her. "There's something I want to ask you." She raised an eyebrow. If you could forget everything that happened these past weeks except for one lesson, what lesson would you keep?" Lily thought for a long moment. "That justice without kindness becomes cruelty," she said. "And kindness without truth becomes enabling." Edward nodded slowly. "And the second lesson?" She smiled softly. "That love, real love, is never entitled. It's earned." Edward placed his hand over hers. "And that," he said quietly, "is the legacy I want to leave behind." The house, once a battlefield, now felt like a home again. A new beginning. A repaired heart. A rescued life. A humbled family. And a final moral that lingered in the quiet room, warm as the fading sunset. Justice reveals who people are. Kindness reveals who we can become. Thank you for watching.